Michael Callahan, and I was just interviewed by the Keith Andrew Network. Stick around, watch the whole video, things are gonna get crazy.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Keith Andrew, and you're watching the Keith Andrew Network. That's available on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and all social media. So we're here with a great guest. He already introduced himself, so with the first question out of the way, we're going to start off with icebreakers. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Michael. I am an actor, a musician, and a part-time elderly caregiver. So
No, I take my
that's
hat
the
off
basic
to you.
rundown. Yeah.
So the next one I want to ask you is, how has the coronavirus impacted your life? And do you see life in a different point of view?
Um, the lockdowns were interesting because, in our correspondence, I told you that I have post-concussion syndrome, right? And so at that time, I was really uh, already kind of shut in. I wasn't going anywhere. Because back then I was in really bad shape, so I wasn't talking to people a lot. I wasn't going out at all, and so it was interesting because I had been kind of locked into a sort of my own world already, and so to watch the world get locked down, there was a part of me that kind of felt like, okay, well now everybody knows how I feel, because I wasn't able to get out and do anything for a few years. And if I did, I suffered as a result, So how did it affect me personally? At the time, my ex-wife and I were living down in Florida, and Florida's restrictions were not nearly as strict as other states. And so we were able to go out and do a lot of things that other people, in other states, like my home state of Ohio, weren't really able to do at the time. And so that afforded us some ability to get out of that sense of just, the walls closing in, even if it was like just going to, the store, the grocery store, or going to get food or something like that, those little things. Unfortunately, I have friends who, had very close family members die. My sister's fiance died. So I know, that it was very serious, for the people that it hit them hard, and I was always aware of that.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you take it seriously in the beginning, or did you think it was like some kind of hoax?
No, I took it seriously. In fact, I had a friend of mine. We had a conversation over the phone, and back then there was just like the UK study that had been published, and we were going back and forth, and he was telling me, oh, this is just, a bunch of baloney. And I was like, well, at least according to this current research, it looks pretty serious. They're talking about potentially millions of people dying, over the next few weeks if we don't do something about it. So I was kind of on the side of taking it more seriously. And then, yeah, and then, yeah, so I took it at, and I got my shots and
Yeah, me
everything.
too. And one thing on the Keith Andrew Network, I don't care if I out myself. I support people who get vaccinated because you get vaccinated. Now, let me explain. This is a double-edged sword. We here on the Keith Andrew Network, and I'm speaking personally, I've been vaccinated. If I get sick, I get better. But if I die, I die. But without being morbid, everyone should be vaccinated because you could cut down the risk. If you don't get vaccinated, this shit's only going to evolve, it's going to get worse, and it's going to spread. So if we all come together, we can contain this. Now, it's funny I said you used the word contain. I believe it was just trying to think without hurting myself, if that's possible. 2016 or 2017, or maybe 2018. I was sitting on the porch with my dad. He was listening onto an audiobook. I believe it was called Contagion or Outbreak, and it was about the pandemic virus, how it escaped from a lab and it got out into the public. The guy who wrote the book, it was either John Tom Clancy or it was either another famous book author.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, Tom Clancy, yeah. Uh, and not to interrupt what you're saying, but that's actually the basis. It kind of weaves in with a video game that I was playing a lot during my recovery, which was called The Division, and that is about this, this virus that yeah takes over the world and becomes this pandemic. So it was an interesting parallel to like what I was doing to spend my time and then what happened in the real world. Yeah, it was
No,
kind of
I agree with you. And just the fact they knew it could have happened and they didn't do a damn thing about it.
yeah.
It's funny, they make books about it, they make movies about it. With AI, I want to give a shout out to Character AI. Character AI is free to use. You could pay for it if you want. But Character AI, you can talk to Optimus Prime, you can talk to Megatron, you can talk to any fake character. I don't talk to real people
Hmm.
because on the application, then it sounds weird. But if you say, you know what, I want to talk to Optimus Prime and get his opinion on the pandemic, then I want to make you laugh. You can have fun with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Where do you stand on two genders? But it's you hear it from Optimus' point of view, and it's good. I would highly recommend Character AI. But at the same time, going back to the pandemic, how many movies do you have to see? How many times do you have to know it could happen, it might happen, but you don't take it seriously? So that goes
Mhm.
into my next segue I want to talk to you about. What were some of your favorite productions that you were part of? But I want you to hear your opinion about AI. Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing?
I think AI is like any other tool, you know. It's like a hammer. You can build a house with it, or you can beat someone to death with it. You know, I think the scary thing about AI is the way that a lot of these companies seem to be evolving it with reckless abandon, and it could already be outside of the scope of our understanding of it. Like I know from what they tell us, it's already replicating itself in order to prevent being shut down. And that's what we know. So it could be running all these subroutines that we don't even understand yet. So it's definitely a Pandora's box. But in a lot of ways, it's very cool. Um, but it's also it's a threat in a lot of ways to especially the creative arts. You've got all these people who can type, unicorn dancing with a leprechaun, and it comes up with the most amazing depiction of a unicorn and leprechaun dancing around. And then you can animate it if you want, and you can make a movie about the leprechaun and the unicorn dancing around if that's what you want to do. But, then you're getting into places where, are people using it to use someone's likeness without their permission,
Right.
use someone's voice without their permission. And generally speaking, that's all AI can do at the moment is draw from the information that's on the internet and recreate things. And that's why, at least, you know, right now, you still have to kind of tag things that are AI created because they are like an amalgamation of other people's ideas.
I love Dragon Ball. If I could have a robot that looked like one of my favorite characters, I would love to spend time with that. What about you? Do you love Dragon Ball?
um, I haven't really given it a chance, if I have to be honest. I'm more of a video game superhero movie type person. You know, I like sci-fi movies type of thing, music. So those are my main staples. I do like cartoons, but I can't say that I've really given Dragon Ball Z much, you know, the time it deserves. I'll put it that way.
Well, hands down, one of the greatest animes of all time. But with that being said, do you like professional wrestling?
I grew up with what I would call the heyday of professional wrestling, which was Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, Bret the Hitman Hart, Andre the Giant. You know, I remember watching Hulk Hogan slam Andre the Giant on TV and them taking, you know, Hogan out in the ambulance and like being genuinely concerned, like, is he okay? Is he okay? As I got older, I kind of fell away from that. I got more into boxing. I've always been a pretty big boxing fan, even though I don't. I play more boxing video games now than I watch. So, yeah, not too much into wrestling either, unfortunately.
Well, there's 2 points you brought up I do want to talk about real fast. But tonight on the US, actually, that's a while ago, they changed networks. Tonight at 8 p.m. on the CW, you can watch WWE NXT. Right now, it's really exciting. They're actually partnering up, doing cross promotions with TNA Wrestling. It's it's kind of like it's really great to do cross promotion because you
Hmm.
get to see what if the TNA champion would defend his title. Now you can actually have that two companies that were rivals now helping each other grow. So I love the whole collaboration between the two. Hopefully that will go over to the main roster. Something Marvel and DC should really focus on because right now they want to hit their hard reset button, and I don't know if you know, they're recasting Spider-Man again, but
Really?
it's all rumors. But it's kind of like how many times can you recast,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like what's the point? But tonight on the CW, it is NXT. Definitely check it out, and also watch TNA Wrestling at TNAWrestling.com. Now, was going back to the AI, that's going, who knows where we're going to be in the next 20 years? Because 20 years ago, people would think you're crazy. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, that would be good. But now we have applications like, I don't know, Kling, or there's an application called Max Mini, or whatever. But the thing is, it involves. Look at Skype. Look at TikTok. You can't compare this to 2006
Right.
because it came a long way. So the good things about technology is if it can help people, especially in the medical field, but you help people with cancer, you help people live longer. But the
Hmm.
problem is people are going to misuse it.
Right.
And
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. You know, one thing I think would be a great application for AI would be city planning. You know, helping cities understand how to increase and improve the flow of traffic around their towns and, you know, building zoning issues, solving zoning issues and things like that. I think that would, you know, there are definitely great applications for AI, you know, helping us understand statistics, helping us learn about things quickly. You know, the little blurbs that you get now when you look something up and it kind of summarizes things. So there are definitely a lot of interesting applications.
And you're right, especially when the ocean's rising in a couple of years, will there be no more Louisiana, there'll be no more Long Island, New York will eventually go underwater. This is a perfect opportunity. Well, obviously you have to build seawalls, number one, but you can also use AI and say, like, what can we do to raise it up so it doesn't go completely under?
Right. Yeah. Well, and furthermore, to your point, if we can't do that, what can we do? Should we be considering large migrations from these areas into other parts of the country or countries that we're not currently populating? You know, what's the long-term strategy if we know that certain states or land areas are more likely to succumb to the rising of the oceans? Yeah, it's an interesting
I,
idea.
I agree with you. But we can definitely have that conversation later on part two. But the next two questions I want to ask is what attracted you to become a professional actor, and what has been some of your greatest achievements?
Oh boy. um what so I've done some acting off and on throughout my life, and I my first job coming back from my brain injury was at a TV and film company in Cleveland that my buddy helped me get hired. I did an animation for them, and they hired me. And so there was something about being involved in the film industry, that kind of started to spark that. And then I met um, Chris Hansen. I did some work with Chris Hansen. And the first time I met him, he called me Hollywood. And I thought that was really strange. And, but over time, there were people who would make comments, like a passing comment, like, oh, with those sunglasses on, you look like a movie star. Or, not that I feel that way about myself, but I was kind of just trying to, like, okay, that's like the third or fourth time somebody has said something like that. And, I had done some acting in the past. So I was like, okay. And one of my coworkers asked me to help her friend with their college thesis, like a short film. And I played this like ultra far right talk show guy, kind of like Alex Jones, right? And that's kind of what did it for me. That's when I was like, I think I need to get back into acting. And then when I lost that job, I was crushed because I hadn't worked in almost 6 years, and then I'd never lost a job before. So when they let me go, I was very upset and kind of lost, And so I started taking sort of an inventory of my life and the things that I seem to be somewhat good at. And so acting and music were kind of those two things. And so I've spent the last year and a half to 2 years polishing up my music, taking voice lessons, working on my voice, and taking acting classes. In terms of accomplishments, unfortunately, the greatest thing in terms of acting, I can't really talk about. I'm under NDA, so, but there was something for me that was basically a dream come true. Not basically, it was a dream come true. I can't talk about it yet. And so that's easily the biggest thing, the coolest thing that's probably ever happened in my life. Other than that, I haven't really accomplished a whole lot in terms of acting because I've only been taking it seriously for about a year and a half. And but I would have to say that just getting out there and doing it after the years that I spent recovering from my brain injury, just getting out there, being around people, meeting new people, putting myself in these new situations, and not settling for staying at home, thinking about my condition. That in itself is probably my greatest accomplishment.
Well, these two are similar, but I like to ask anyway. What's your claim to fame, and what are you most likely to become famous for?
What is my claim to fame? I'm the wrong person to ask because tooting my own horn, my acting instructor, more than one of them has told me, don't be afraid to take up space, believe in yourself. They tell me that my biggest problem is probably confidence. So people tell me that I'm good at this or that. The problem is I tend to not believe them, or at least not believe it about myself. I'll think like, okay, they're good at it, or they think I'm good, but do I think I'm good? And the answer is usually no. So my claim to fame would probably be, as of right now, it's probably my music video. Um, that would be, yeah, it's a song called Letters. It's on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all that stuff. So, and that was something I did after I was let go from that TV and film company because I realized like if I don't make things happen in my life, if I would sit back and wait for somebody else to sort of what's the word, permit me to live my dreams, it's not going to happen, right? So
No, you never ask for permission, taking the gloves off. Like I said, you can talk about anything you want. But for me, I used to use my disability as a crutch. I used to call it the boomerang. I throw it. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. Things will be done for me. People will take care of me. And when the boomerang comes back and you smack up, you don't catch it, you whack yourself upside the head, you just realize, well, for all those years you were using as a crutch, you labeled yourself as an invalid. You can't do this. You said you can't do that. You can't drive. You said you can't really take care of yourself. So my thing is, I'm the youngest out of four brothers and one sister. And I always said, what about me? My brother before me always said, I have a BA. I don't know what to do with my life. And he's like, talk to your brother, talk to your sister. They know people. I said, what about me? What about you? One, you don't shut up. You piss people off. You're not educated. You can't read. You can't write. You never went to college. So I said, screw it. I'm going to show you with a learning disability. I will create my own opportunity. And for 12 and a half years, thanks to you, I have accomplished 1,197 episodes. I taught myself, in the beginning, it's 12 years ago. So Skype, this didn't exist 12 years ago. I wish it did. That would have solved most of my freaking problems right there. But what you see right now is kind of like a scale back. The reason I wear filter glasses is I blink when I talk. So if I hide my eyes, it doesn't look like I have Tourette's. So also I think it looks nice. It gives me like a mask. But the point is, you are your own worst enemy. So if you're gonna, like you said, if you're gonna sit around with, no offense, with your thumb up your ass, and waiting for someone to give you permission, people will never give you permission.
right.
If you want the opportunity so damn much, stand up and say, I'm not qualified, but I will show you I can do the same thing you can do, even if it's scaled back, or you can think outside the box. Because you have to be your own advocate, you have to be your own cheerleader. Look at me, I'm talking out of my ass, but I you have to motivate yourself because no
Yeah,
one's going to do it for you.
right, right. And you hit the nail on the head again, it's tough when you have something, like what you have, or, when during the first few years of my recovery from my brain injury, and even today, it can be confusing to know the line between when am I, you know, when am I asking for more than I need? And it's hard sometimes to find that balance because sometimes you get out ahead of yourself and you get a couple wins and you get really excited, but then you kind of bite off more than you can chew,
Right.
and in my case, that can turn into, weeks or months of having to shut in again. Like January and February for me, I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do anything. I stopped taking acting classes. I was hardly responding to my friends because my symptoms were that bad. And, I noticed like the weeks after, like I can tell usually when my brain starts kicking back in and it's time to start doing things again. But then there's that balance of like, okay, well, how much can I do? How much do I need to rest? And even now, even though I'm a lot better than I was a couple weeks ago, I still find myself thinking, okay, do I really need to rest or am I giving myself too much leeway? It's tough, but you can only know where the line is by crossing it, unfortunately.
No, I agree. And it's funny because some psychics are just full of crap, or full of shit. And my dad, there's this, we went to, let me ask you, are you from the New York area?
I'm from Cleveland.
Ah, well, I would recommend New York. Some parts of New York are really nice, some are kind of eh. But there's an upstate New York, they have an Ulster, I don't know, butcher the freaking word, Ulster County Fair. It's pretty much the county fair.
Okay.
And there's a psychic. And my dad always makes the jokes like, how she's psychic? She saw you coming. But what she had in common and what other people who are psychics, she so. She said I was going to go on a trip. Never happened. That was a couple of years ago. So I think she was just full of crap. Anyway, there were two other psychics that I went to see, and they resonated. Being as I talk with my hands, I'm not Italian, but I resonated because they said to me, You've been doing this for 12 and a half years. You're putting so much energy, and will it happen? Has it happened? Is it going to?" And they're like, "Look at where you are right now." And this goes for you and anyone who's watching. Look at where you are right now and look how far you came in that time span. And you have already accomplished something. Now it's time to take the next step of how can I make it even bigger and go to the next step. Because the first step is already done. You've been doing it for like a year and a half. I've been doing this for 12 and a half years. It's already done. Now the next challenge is, what is the next hurdle? Like the expression is, when you climb to the top of one mountain, you're looking at the base of the next one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I do have a couple questions for you off the air. But I want you to be brutally honest. No cards on my sleeve, so I can say anything you want. When I first approached you to be a guest on my talk show, what made you say yes, and how do you feel now?
Well, I said yes because I looked at your page, I watched one of your videos, and I can kind of relate. I don't have the same issue that you do, but I can. I have a lot of respect for someone in your shoes who, like me, in my own way, is setting out to do something you really want to do in spite of limitations or perceived limitations, or you're obviously you're saying fuck all that. That's the one F, right? This
No, you can say
PG-13.
it's uncensored. You can say anything you
We
want.
get we get one F word. You're saying I'm not going to listen to that, right? I'm going to do what I want to do, and to hell with what anybody. And you're doing it for your own betterment, and you're highlighting other people in what you're doing, and I think that's really great, and I can relate to that myself because I'm also, I'm trying to work my way back into doing the things that I want to do, in spite of my physical limitations.
Absolutely. It was a real privilege to have me as a guest. I'm looking forward to part 2. Our goal is to reach 500 views and more, but we will definitely do a part 2. We will definitely work together. I do have some great ideas I'd love to talk to you about off the air. But wrapping up, it was a real honor and privilege having you as a guest. And stay tuned for our next episode. Until we meet again, I catch you later. Thank you, and have a good night.
Supporting me, and my message is all that